Steve Harvey had hosted Family Feud for over 13 years, and during that time he had witnessed countless unexpected moments that tested his ability to maintain composure and control over the show's proceedings. He had seen contestants faint from excitement, families break into spontaneous celebrations that disrupted filming schedules, and answers so bizarre they required extended breaks while he recovered from laughter. However, on that unforgettable Wednesday afternoon in August 2024, Steve would encounter a situation that defied every protocol and expectation he had developed through years of professional experience. What began as a competitive and entertaining game between two enthusiastic families would be interrupted by an entrance so dramatic and unexpected that production would halt completely, leaving Steve Harvey momentarily speechless and forcing everyone present to witness a personal confrontation that had been building toward explosion for months. If you appreciate genuine stories about real families dealing with complex situations that reveal the messy reality beneath polished surfaces, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for content that explores the authentic human experiences that occasionally break through the carefully constructed world of television entertainment. The Bradley family from Colorado stood at their designated podium, competing against the Martinez family from New Mexico in what had been an energetic and closely contested game. Kenneth Bradley, 46 years old and working as a real estate developer, positioned himself at the center of his family team alongside his current wife Stephanie, his adult son Marcus from his first marriage, his sister Patricia, and his brother-in-law Thomas. Kenneth projected confidence and charm, engaging with Steve Harvey during breaks with the easy manner of someone comfortable in social situations and accustomed to being the center of attention. His expensive suit and designer watch suggested financial success, and his interactions with Stephanie demonstrated the affectionate behavior of a couple still in the honeymoon phase of their relationship despite having been married for 2 years. The game had progressed through 3 rounds, with both families demonstrating solid performance and competitive spirit. The Bradley family held a slight lead heading into the 4th round, primarily due to Kenneth's quick reflexes at the buzzer and his ability to provide answers that consistently appeared on the survey board. Steve Harvey had been enjoying the competitive energy and the personalities involved, delivering his characteristic humor and creating moments of entertainment that had the studio audience engaged and responsive throughout the taping. The atmosphere suggested this would be another successful episode in the long history of the show. During the transition between the 3rd and 4th rounds, while Steve Harvey was reviewing scores and preparing to introduce the next survey question, a commotion erupted near the studio entrance. Security personnel could be heard attempting to prevent someone from entering the filming area, but a woman's voice cut through their objections with determined authority. The voice was loud enough that everyone on stage turned to look toward the source of the disruption, including Kenneth Bradley, whose face transformed from confident smile to visible alarm in the span of seconds. A woman strode onto the Family Feud stage with the purposeful walk of someone who had made a decision and would not be deterred from executing it. She appeared to be in her mid-40s, dressed professionally in business attire, and carrying herself with the righteous fury of someone who had reached the absolute limit of her patience. She walked directly toward the Bradley family podium, ignoring the security personnel who were attempting to intercept her and the production staff who were signaling frantically to stop filming. Her eyes were locked on Kenneth Bradley with laser focus that communicated years of accumulated grievances reaching their breaking point. Steve Harvey, recognizing immediately that this was not part of any planned segment and that security was failing to contain the situation, stepped forward with his hands raised in a gesture meant to be both calming and authoritative. His voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to controlling chaotic situations through force of personality and professional authority. However, before he could speak, the woman addressed Kenneth directly in a voice that carried throughout the studio with perfect clarity. The woman identified herself as Denise Bradley, Kenneth's ex-wife, and the mother of Marcus, who stood frozen at the podium watching his mother confront his father on national television. Her opening statement was delivered with the controlled anger of someone who had rehearsed this moment in her mind many times while hoping she would never actually need to execute it. She explained that she had learned about Kenneth's appearance on Family Feud through their son Marcus, who had mentioned it during one of their regular phone conversations. She had initially felt nothing but mild amusement that her ex-husband was appearing on a game show with his new wife and their blended family. However, Denise continued. She had discovered something 2 days before the scheduled taping that transformed her amusement into fury and drove her to take the extraordinary action of confronting Kenneth in such a public venue. She revealed that Kenneth had failed to make his court-ordered child support payments for their younger daughter, Emily, who was 15 years old and not present at the taping. Kenneth had been telling Denise for the past 6 months that his business was experiencing temporary financial difficulties and that he needed flexibility on the payment schedule until his cash flow situation improved. Denise had reluctantly agreed to this arrangement, allowing Kenneth to reduce his payments substantially while he supposedly worked through his business challenges. The revelation she had made 2 days earlier, Denise explained with rising emotion, was that Kenneth's claims of financial hardship had been complete fabrications. She had learned through a mutual acquaintance that Kenneth had recently purchased a vacation home in Aspen, had taken Stephanie on an expensive European vacation, and had made significant purchases of luxury items, including the designer watch he was currently wearing on television. While claiming poverty to avoid supporting his daughter, Kenneth had been living a lifestyle of considerable affluence and spending money freely on himself and his new wife. The studio had fallen into complete silence as Denise delivered her accusations. Kenneth Bradley's face had cycled through multiple expressions, including shock, anger, and something approaching panic as he realized the full scope of what was occurring. Stephanie, his current wife, turned to look at her husband with confusion and concern, clearly hearing information that contradicted whatever Kenneth had told her about his financial obligations to his first family. Marcus, caught between his parents in the most literal and uncomfortable way possible, looked down at the podium as if wishing he could disappear into the floor. Steve Harvey, who had remained silent during Denise's initial statement while processing the unprecedented nature of the situation, finally found his voice and attempted to regain some measure of control over the chaos that had erupted on his stage. He addressed Denise with a combination of sympathy for her position and professional concern about the appropriateness of conducting such a confrontation in this venue. He acknowledged that her grievances appeared legitimate and serious, but suggested that a game show stage might not be the most productive location for addressing them. Denise responded to Steve's intervention with the weary determination of someone who had exhausted all conventional approaches and felt forced into unconventional action. She explained that she had attempted for 6 months to address Kenneth's non-payment through appropriate channels, including his attorney, direct conversations, and formal complaints through the family court system. Kenneth had responded to each approach with promises, excuses, and delays while continuing to live lavishly and avoid his legal obligations to support their daughter. When she had learned that he would be appearing on national television, portraying himself as a family man while actively neglecting his financial responsibilities to his own child, something inside her had broken. The confrontation that followed revealed layers of conflict and resentment that had accumulated during their divorce and its aftermath. Kenneth attempted to defend himself by arguing that the child support amount had been set during better financial times and that changed circumstances justified modifications to the agreement. Denise countered by pointing out that Kenneth had never filed for a legal modification, but had simply stopped paying while expecting her to accept his unilateral decision. She noted that he apparently had sufficient money for luxury vacations and real estate investments, but claimed poverty when it came to supporting the daughter he had helped bring into the world. Stephanie, the current wife, interjected with her own questions about the financial situation. She revealed that Kenneth had told her his divorce settlement had been finalized with no ongoing support obligations, a claim that was clearly contradicted by Denise's presence and accusations. The realization that her husband had been lying to her about his financial and legal obligations created visible tension between Kenneth and Stephanie, even as they stood together at the Family Feud podium. The carefully constructed image of their happy blended family was disintegrating in real time as truth replaced the fiction Kenneth had been maintaining. Steve Harvey made the decision to stop filming completely and clear the stage of everyone except the immediate parties to the conflict. He recognized that while the confrontation was dramatic and would certainly generate significant attention if aired, there were serious questions about the ethics of broadcasting such a deeply personal family crisis for entertainment purposes. He also recognized that the presence of Marcus, forced to witness his mother publicly accusing his father of child neglect while standing beside his stepmother, created a particularly uncomfortable dynamic that needed to be addressed with sensitivity. The production break extended for over an hour as Denise, Kenneth, Stephanie, and Marcus were moved to a private conference room where they could continue their discussion away from cameras and audiences. Steve Harvey, demonstrating the pastoral instincts that had made him a trusted figure beyond his role as an entertainer, joined them briefly to encourage honest conversation and to ensure that the situation did not escalate into something more volatile. He emphasized to Kenneth that the accusations being made were serious, and that regardless of whatever financial disputes might exist, failing to support a minor child while living in obvious comfort was both legally problematic and morally indefensible. The conversation in the private room was intense and emotional, with Denise providing documentation she had brought specifically to support her claims about Kenneth's finances and his failure to meet his support obligations. Kenneth, confronted with evidence that contradicted his claims of financial hardship, eventually acknowledged that he had been prioritizing other expenditures over his child support payments, and that his representations to Denise about his business difficulties had been exaggerated to create justification for reducing payments. Stephanie, learning for the first time the full extent of Kenneth's financial obligations and his dishonesty about them, expressed her own anger at having been deceived about such a fundamental aspect of their family's financial and legal situation. Marcus, speaking for the first time during the confrontation, addressed his father directly about the impact of his choices on the family. He explained that his younger sister Emily had been aware of the financial struggles their mother faced trying to maintain their household on a reduced income, while Kenneth avoided his obligations. He described his own discomfort watching his father live comfortably with Stephanie, while knowing that his mother was struggling to provide for Emily. He questioned how his father could justify appearing on a family game show to win prize money while refusing to pay court-ordered support for his own daughter. The confrontation did not produce immediate resolution of all the conflicts and resentments that had surfaced, but it did result in Kenneth making commitments that suggested some recognition of his failures. He agreed to immediately resume full child support payments and to work with Denise and their attorneys to develop a payment plan for the arrears that had accumulated during his months of non-payment. He acknowledged that his claims of financial hardship had been dishonest, and that his prioritization of discretionary spending over his obligations to Emily had been wrong. He also recognized that his dishonesty with Stephanie about the existence and status of his support obligations had damaged trust in their marriage and would require significant work to repair. The decision about whether to continue the Family Feud taping or cancel the Bradley family's appearance entirely was complicated. The family's internal conflicts had been exposed in a way that made continuing to portray them as a happy, unified team feel dishonest and uncomfortable. However, the other family members, including Patricia and Thomas, had done nothing wrong and had traveled significant distances to participate in the taping. Ultimately, the decision was made to complete the episode, but with a different family configuration that excluded Kenneth and Stephanie, allowing Marcus, Patricia, and Thomas to be joined by two other extended family members who had attended as audience supporters. When the episode eventually aired 5 months after the original taping, the network made the unprecedented decision to include a segment explaining what had occurred and why the family lineup had changed mid-game. The segment included carefully edited portions of Denise's confrontation with Kenneth, focusing on the issues of child support and financial responsibility, while avoiding the most personal and emotional aspects of their conflict. The network consulted extensively with legal experts and ethics advisors about the appropriateness of airing the content, ultimately concluding that the public interest in addressing issues of parental financial responsibility outweighed privacy concerns, particularly given that all parties had provided consent after extensive discussion. The response from viewers was intense and overwhelmingly sympathetic to Denise. Thousands of custodial parents, the majority of them mothers, shared their own experiences of dealing with ex-spouses who avoided child support obligations while maintaining comfortable lifestyles. Many expressed appreciation for Denise's courage in confronting Kenneth publicly after private approaches had failed to produce results. The episode sparked broader conversations about enforcement of child support orders, the inadequacy of legal mechanisms for holding non-paying parents accountable, and the frustration experienced by custodial parents who shoulder financial burdens while non-custodial parents enjoy discretionary income. Legal experts appeared on news programs to discuss the incident, using it as an opportunity to educate the public about child support obligations, modification procedures, and the legal consequences of non-payment. They emphasized that Kenneth's behavior, failing to pay court-ordered support while clearly having the financial means to do so, could result in serious legal sanctions including wage garnishment, seizure of assets, and even criminal contempt charges in some jurisdictions. Several experts noted that parents who genuinely experience financial hardship have legal avenues for seeking modifications to support orders, making Kenneth's choice to simply stop paying while maintaining his lifestyle particularly indefensible. The impact on Kenneth Bradley's personal and professional life was significant and lasting. His real estate business suffered as potential clients and partners became aware of his failure to meet his obligations to his daughter and his dishonesty with both his ex-wife and current wife. Several business relationships were terminated by parties who felt that someone who would neglect his own child's support while living comfortably lacked the integrity necessary for professional partnerships. His marriage to Stephanie entered counseling as they worked through the trust issues created by his dishonesty about his financial and legal obligations. Denise Bradley became an unexpected advocate for child support enforcement reform, sharing her story at legislative hearings and working with organizations that assist custodial parents in securing the support their children are legally entitled to receive. She emphasized that her decision to confront Kenneth on the Family Feud stage, while dramatic and unconventional, had been born from desperation after months of failed attempts to secure compliance through proper legal channels. She argued that the system for enforcing child support orders was broken in ways that allowed recalcitrant parents to avoid obligations with minimal consequences, while custodial parents and children suffered the financial impact. Steve Harvey reflected on the incident in multiple interviews, discussing how it had challenged his understanding of his role and the nature of the show he hosted. He explained that while Family Feud was meant to be light entertainment, the real families who appeared on the show brought their real problems and conflicts with them, even when those problems were not visible on the surface. He expressed admiration for Denise's determination to hold Kenneth accountable, while also acknowledging the complicated questions about whether a game show stage was an appropriate venue for such confrontations, and whether the network should broadcast them even when the parties consented. Marcus Bradley, caught in the most uncomfortable position possible during the confrontation between his parents, spoke publicly about his experience several months after the incident. He described the difficulty of loving both his parents while recognizing his father's failures and his mother's justified anger. He explained that watching his father prioritize his new life with Stephanie over his obligations to Emily had damaged their relationship in ways that were still being repaired through family counseling. He expressed hope that the public nature of the confrontation, as painful as it had been to experience, might ultimately create positive change in his father's behavior and priorities. The broader cultural impact of the incident extended beyond questions of child support enforcement to touch on themes of accountability, public versus private confrontation, and the ways that financial decisions reflect moral priorities. Commentators noted that Kenneth's choices revealed a value system that prioritized personal comfort and luxury over legal and moral obligations to his own child, a prioritization that many found deeply troubling regardless of whatever technical legal arguments might be made about modification procedures or changed circumstances. As this extraordinary story reaches its conclusion, the lessons it offers remain profoundly relevant for anyone navigating the complex landscape of divorce, co-parenting, and financial responsibility. Kenneth Bradley's appearance on Family Feud, interrupted by his ex-wife's dramatic entrance and public accusations of child support neglect, demonstrated how carefully constructed public images can hide private failures and how desperation can drive people to unconventional actions when conventional approaches fail to produce justice. If this story prompted reflection on the importance of meeting obligations to children, and the courage required to demand accountability even when doing so requires uncomfortable public confrontation, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. The responsibility to support our children transcends the dissolution of marriages and the formation of new relationships, and the choices we make about prioritizing those obligations reveal fundamental truths about our character and values. The moment when Denise Bradley walked onto that Family Feud stage, refusing to allow her ex-husband to portray himself as a devoted family man while neglecting his financial duties to their daughter, serves as a powerful reminder that accountability sometimes requires dramatic action, and that public shame can be an effective tool when private appeals to conscience and law have failed to produce results.